Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Woodpeckers Deep Dive. My name's Jeff Farris. We're here at Woodpeckers headquarters, and today we're going to take a closer look at Woodpeckers MultiRouter. Now, the MultiRouter has been around since the 1980s. It was demonstrated for years at the woodworking shows. For a little over a year, the MultiRouter has been machined, assembled, tested, and developed here at Woodpeckers. We've made some improvements to the machine. I'll be showing you those in just a few minutes, but today we're going to take a closer look at the features of the MultiRouter and how it works for mortise and tenon joints. Okay, let's get started. So what is a MultiRouter? The MultiRouter is all about precision joinery. It uses a 2¼ horsepower fixed base router to machine your stock. The router is mounted to a cast and precision machined table that travels straight up and down. There's a second table perpendicular to the first that travels straight toward the router and also side to side. So let's take a closer look at the two tables. The vertical table is dead flat and the router bit is precisely square to the table. That sets the table up to be the perfect depth stop for most of your cuts. There's a center line engraved on the table that you'll use to quickly align your stock. The horizontal table also has an engraved center line, and the two are easily calibrated to each other. There are 18 5/8" diameter holes arranged on the table. Material clamps simply drop into the holes and you can secure your work. The clamp heads rotate a full 360 degrees, so you can clamp anything pretty much anywhere without having to set up complicated bridging. MultiRouter is all about precision control. Linear ball bearings riding on ground and polished shafts keep the tables moving in perfectly straight lines without needing a template. Machinists call this type of arrangement 3-axis control. Each axis moves in one plane. Each can be locked, and each can have its travel limited by stops. In most cases, you'll lock one axis and manipulate the other two. While you don't have to use a template to control the MultiRouter, they can be a valuable addition to the system. Machined aluminum templates with perfectly square shoulders mount to the horizontal table. Just follow the template with the stylus, and you are creating perfectly, always identically sized joints. Now, one more feature I want to brag about before we start making chips is our new dust collection cabinet. This bolts on to the vertical face right underneath the router. This top slides in place very easily so that you can get to the router to make your adjustments, but when you're ready to go to work, drop it on like that, tighten the knob, and now almost all of the fine particle dust and most of the shavings are going to go into your dust collector and not into your shop. Now, you might be able to tell I'm pretty excited about this machine. And we have lots of deep dives coming up on this. We're going to go over all of the different joints that you can make with the MultiRouter on future deep dives. But for this first one, I want to take a look at the joint that most people were thinking about when they decided to buy a MultiRouter. Most people, when they buy this machine, it's because they want to make perfect mortise and tenon joints. So let's set them up and show you how to do it. I'll start by installing the 1/2" by 2" tenon template in the template holder and mounting it onto the machine. Since we're using a template to cut the tenon, we don't have to follow the age-old rule about cutting the mortise first and making the tenon match. We'll start with the tenon and then dial in the mortise. Next, I'll set the router depth of cut to match my planned tenon length. Now, I want to set the stop on the infeed of the horizontal table so the bit can't crash into the template. Next, I want to clamp my stock to the table and bring the router bit down until it just kisses the top. My material is 1¼ inch, and the tenon is a 1/2 inch. So each shoulder is 3/8 of an inch. So I'll adjust the scale to 1 3/8. Move the material out of the way and use the micro adjuster to bring the router bit down to the 1 inch mark. That's where we want the router to stop cutting. So we'll adjust the stylus until it just kisses the top of the template. Now I'm going to align the two tables center to center using the notch in the tenon template. Next, I'll lock the side-to-side travel and raise the vertical table so I can align the material to the table and the center line and clamp it down. Now it's time to cut the tenon. I'm going with the rotation of the bit, called climb cutting, to get a very clean shoulder. I use that direction to take light cuts around the piece until I'm against the template all the way around. Then I'll make a couple more passes with a conventional cut, feeding into the rotation of the bit, with firm pressure against the template. There we go. We're a couple thou under for thickness, just enough room for the glue. And on our length, we are between 1 1/2 thousandth under for length, so it'll be a perfect fit in a router cut mortise. All right, let's move on to that part. Center the table again with the tenon template and lock the side-to-side travel. Remove the template. Bring the table forward until you just have clearance between the vertical and horizontal tables, and set the infeed stop. Position the center of the mortise on the center line of the table. Align the stock to the vertical table and lock it down. To center the mortise in your 1 1/4 inch thick stock, we just need to drop the vertical table down by 1/2 inch, from the 1 inch mark to the 1/2 inch mark. Move the lateral travel until the bit lines up with the end of the mortise and set the first stop. Go to the other end of the mortise and set the second stop. Adjust the depth of cut on the router just a little bit deeper. Start the router and work the lateral feed and end feed together to cut the mortise. And here's our finished joint. Perfectly flush, very, very nice fit, not too loose, not too tight, just what we were looking for. Okay, let me give you a few tricks to make sure that everything comes out just the way it did in this video. Now, rule number 1 to getting good fitting joints is to, when you're making the parts for your project, machine some extra stock. Make sure you have some stock that is exactly the same dimension as the pieces that you're going to be machining. That way, you can do setup cuts and set up mortises based not on your finished pieces. And that is going to save you loads of trouble. Okay? So machine extra stock, tip number 1. Tip number 2. If reading a scale makes you go cross-eyed, try this method for adjusting the stylus. With the bit kissed off on the top of the material, use a spacer block to set the distance from the stylus to the top of the template. This one, we want to move it down exactly 3/8 of an inch, so I cut some stock close and then used a block plane and a set of digital calipers to get the spacer block just the right size. Now I also use a spacer block to set the length of the mortise. Just lock the table in the center and use the same spacer block on both sides. The dimension of the spacer block is easy. It's the length of the mortise minus the diameter of the router bit and the result divided by 2. In this case, 2 inches minus 1/2 inch is 1 1/2. Divided by 2 is 3/4 of an inch. That's the size of my spacer block. Folks, thanks so much for watching the deep dive today about the multi-router. Hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you learned more about this system. If you liked the show today, be sure to give us a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. That way you'll know about every one of our videos right when they come out. And if you are interested in getting a multi-router, there's a link down below that'll take you straight to the ordering page. Also, there's a link right over there that'll take you to the product video on the multi-router. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Woodpeckers Deep Dive.